and welcome to the Color Comics. My name is Aaron in a two-part video that is going to span from my regular channel to my Patreon channel. But don't worry, either way you're going to get a lot of knowledge out of this, at least I hope so. Remember when collecting comics was really kind of an easy thing to do? You had your had one of these. When I was a kid, it was like 15 or 25 cents. So it shows you what I am. There was no like backing or any of these plastic bags back then. But in the 90s, when I almost ran a comic book shop myself, actually, I started on that. We started to get these here boards, backboards, and that. So this is what you call a floppy nowadays. So a floppy is a regular comic book. And the one I'm showing you right here is Star Wars by Kieron Gillen. If you have not yet picked up the Jason Aaron Star Wars, it's amazing, and we'll get in that in another video. But this is a basic floppy. It's a comic just the way most of you have seen it. If you have never collected comics before, this is probably what you remember. But what we're going to do today, what's really important, is that we're going to look at all the different iterations of collected editions. It was collected editions that got me back into collecting comics in the first place. And I have a few stories to tell along the way as we go through. We're going through different iterations of DC, of Marvel. You're going to see the massive difference between what would be a Dark Horse omnibus and a Marvel or DC omnibus. Although I don't have one here, I'm also going to talk about the Dark Horse library editions, which in my opinion, because these are ones I've held in my hands in stores, are the best version of the collected editions that are out there. And the thing is, they're very similar to what DC calls an absolute. And don't worry if none of this makes any sense to you right now. By the end of this video, all of it definitely will. So let's start out with the trade paperback. It's probably one of the most popular and well-known because you can find them in any bookstore. And this here is a trade from Image Comics. It is of Kieron Gillen. Back to Kieron Gillen again. It wasn't on purpose, I honestly. But this is Phonogram. Phonogram has 3 trades out there, and I'll tell you right now, see this right here? Although I don't think my better half has ever read this. This is literally her, like her type of comic. So a trade paperback is a regular size. There's nothing different with the trade paperback and the size of it. When you open it up, you get the story, collected issues, and there are sometimes in the back you will get some things like some interviews. If you're lucky, you'll get like any different like cover art. But it's with the trade paperback, it's kind of anything goes. What's most important for a trade paperback is it's going to be the collected edition of the comics themselves. So you're going to get the different comic stories in there. That's basically all a trade paperback really is. It is giving you the story. And with trades, if a comic story, for instance, is a story that goes over a long period of time, then there's going to be more than one trade needed to collect it. And that's when we get into our next one. This is a Marvel Essential. It came about in the series that came out in 1996. And for the longest time, until something we'll get to a little bit later, this was your go-to. It was done fairly cheaply and inexpensively. It used kind of like similar to, I guess, telephone book type of paper. Kind of a newsprint style paper, and you got a lot when you bought one of these. So this is the second X Factor volume. I have volume 1 as well. Neither one of these have been given a larger format as of this taping. This one here, for instance, included in it X Factor 17 to 35, Annual number 2, and Thor 378. Why Thor 378? Because well, Mutant Massacre was a thing, and it kind of crossed over into the storyline. These here were done in black and white. Give you a better look at the way these are. And some people didn't want to collect these because they were done in black and white. I was going to, I'd gotten into like art school a few years before this, and for me, like getting to see the art in kind of its natural, like uncolored format, to see like the line working and drawing was really helpful to me. And that's initially that, and the fact that there was such a volume of stories in there that I found it really easy to collect for these. Now, there is the thing that this is a glued spine, so you had to be very careful with these here. But to this very day, I will still pick these up whenever I find them. Now, DC was a little bit late when it came to this because DC started their showcase line in 2005. They literally started it with Green Lantern and Superman. They came out at the same time, and they gave them a $9.99 cover price for each of the volumes. I was living in Ottawa when they came out. I was actually at the comic book store when they put them on the shelves for the very first time. I remember picking them both up. My oldest was going to a HeroClix tournament, and I was there to when they put them on the shelf. But this is a really neat line, and the good thing about the Marvel Essentials line and the DC Showcase line is that you can see that pretty much it is, they have a standard format to them. They did change it up a little bit with the Marvel Essentials line over the years, but not really too much to take any notice of. Is that they both contained a lot of stories. They both had the black and white artwork on the inside, and I am pretty sure, and they both had the cover art when it was relevant as well. This is Black Hawk right here, a comic that I used to read when I was a teenager. Actually, probably preteen. And these came out normally when they would come out. They would be around $16.99 US and $19.99 Canadian. So it was very inexpensive to collect these. Now, every once in a while later on, we would get something from DC along the lines of a Nightfall. And what this is it looks exactly like what your DC Showcase was, and but it's not. See, when you look at this here, the biggest difference you're going to see is everything here is in color. So it is literally kind of using the same type of print that it would have been in the comics in time. This is pre-glossy page days when it comes to the comic books. Before, it took me a while to get used to glossy, by the way. I really loved this style of a comic. And here's for instance, here's a picture of Catwoman from Night Quest. This is the Jim Balent Catwoman. My favorite iteration of Catwoman, by the way. Now, they weren't the only ones that did this, though. Dark Horse had their own versions as well. Dark Horse had what they called phone books. And, well, they didn't call them phone books, but people that collected them called them phone books. This is the Savage Sword of Conan. And what's really different about this one is, like the other ones, yes, it is in black and white. And yes, it is using the same quality of printing and page source. The biggest difference here is Savage Sword of Conan was a magazine that was done in black and white. So the complaint that I'm not seeing it in its original colors didn't really work for this. Savage Sword of Conan was a good one to read, except for one thing. Dark Horse didn't make Savage Sword of Conan. It was a Marvel book, and Dark Horse got the rights to the character. They could print certain things. They couldn't print the backstories. They couldn't print the letters pages. They couldn't print any of that stuff. In my next video, when we're going over the different collected styles and editions, I'm going to be showing Savage Sword of Conan along with the later iteration of the Marvel Conan Omnibus, and you'll see quite the difference. Though to read like Conan and read like a large bulk of Conan at once, these were the ones that I started with, and these here would run about, see if I can see the price on these here. They normally have them here, but they don't. But I think it runs around like $20, $25 max for something like this. Usually a little bit less. Again, they run around 500 pages each. And that's the way things would go for quite a while until it changed. And when it changed, it really, really changed. Things got a bit fancier and a bit more expensive. In around 2009, we started to get the Marvel Complete Collection. So right here is the Amazing Spider-Man, the Clone Saga in complete collection format. Now, when they say a complete collection, when you buy one of these, it can be a bit misleading because you would think here, okay, well, I have the complete story. This is volume 3 of the complete collection. There are around 5 or 6 volumes of this, not including the volumes that were done for the Ben Reilly portion of this here saga. And you can actually, to get all of these, it will take you 4 omnibuses, and they are big size omnibuses to get them. So when they say it's complete, it's not really. You get stories here, but you'll sometimes just get like certain pages from issues as opposed to entire issues. Things that basically give you the through line of the story. So think of this as a larger portion, a larger version of the trade paperback, and kind of a sort of a modern iteration of what the Marvel Essentials was. But we're not quite there yet. We haven't quite got to the Marvel Essentials format. So where this started in around 2009 and would usually run anywhere between 400 or 500 pages or so, it would be along the lines of the regular artwork right there with usually a little bit of like kind of either like a pinup gallery or alternate covers in the back of the book. These, however, would not cost you $20 maximum or $19.99 Canadian. These would run you about $45 new on the stand. And people like these and still collect these. However, Marvel came out with something a bit better. And I'm not going to lie, a slight bit pricier. They came out with the Epic Collection. Now, this is the very first Epic Collection that I ever bought. I've got a few more now, but this here is Symbiosis. The very first, basically the first appearances of Venom. With the Epic Collections, they did something a little bit different. They did these based on storylines. So although this is volume 1 of the Venom series, they didn't do them in order. So you could get a volume 1 and then a volume 5 and then a volume 6, basically doing different storylines, and in all honesty, kind of based on popularity and like how they can get them remastered and done. This, as you can see, this looks a lot like what we saw with the complete collection. However, we're getting into a slightly better paper quality here as well. And we will get more features usually at the end. I'm not sure if this one has as many features as some of the other ones, but you'll get things along the lines of some of the different like trade paperback covers. You'll get some of the initial like artwork designs for different characters like Venom. And sometimes it'll have articles like bullpen bulletins, or if there's like a really special letter that needs to be highlighted, that'll be shown in here as well. These here can run from around 200 and something to 500-ish pages as well. The price range from these started out around $39.99 US with $49.99 Canadian, and it now can go up to around like 60, 65 Canadian when it comes to collecting these. The most important thing to know about this that is actually kind of a brilliant idea, which I kind of wish some of the movie boutique labels would do, is this right here. So as you can see, there's a picture of Venom right here. There is the name Symbiosis. And although this does have a volume number, it's not on the spine. It is on the back. So when you take it out, you know what volume it is, the years that are represented, 1984 to 1992 for this one right here. But it's not put on here because if they're doing volume 1 and then comes out with volume 3 and comes out with volume 5, eventually they go through until you get the complete collection. But each one has its own storyline. It's not like you have to read volume 1, volume 2, and volume 3 in order to understand the way that the story goes. So it will look kind of weird on your shelf to have volume 1 of Fantastic Four, volume 6 Fantastic Four, volume 24 Fantastic Four. But by putting the number on the back and designating the years, it really gives you a better idea of where exactly they are going with that. Recently, Marvel and DC moved over to Penguin. So basically now their publication is being done by Penguin. Penguin has a series of novels called Penguin Classics. And it wasn't a comic book thing, but now it is. I was actually coming back from Canada. I was at the airport and I saw one of these and I wanted to grab one because this is my very first one. This is Black Panther Penguin Classics. You can see it's very much like the aesthetics of the other two books, except it has its own style. There's always been a bit of an eliteness to the Penguin Classics. They've always been kind of like the cheaper, but they've always been like classic stories, Sherlock Holmes, stuff like that. But now they're doing like the comic book format. It has the basic Penguin logo on the side. I really wish it would have had a Black Panther one, but this, as far as it goes on the inside, it is fantastic. The artwork is great. Everything looks wonderful on here, and there are some great write-ups here as well. This one, for instance, has a plot synopsis for Jungle Action issue number 7. And when I say plot synopsis, I mean look at this. This is the original write-up for the comic itself. Here are the original pages for Jungle Action number 7. That is an incredible bonus to put in here. There is of course Marvel Masterwork, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and the introductions that were written for the Marvel Masterworks are actually here as well. Omnibuses will often include the Marvel Masterworks things too. Speaking of Masterworks, I guess we should get into that next, right? Even before there were trade paperbacks, there was this, the Marvel Masterworks. In 1987, that's when Marvel started this line. Basically, it has around 9 to 10 issues, and it is done in the highest quality possible. Often, the people that collect omnibuses note that once a Masterworks series is complete, that there's probably an omnibus coming, because it means that these here have been collected in the highest possible quality that's out there. What does that mean though? You pay for the highest possible quality. You're only getting 9 or 10 issues, whereas the early ones were around like $29 or $39. The average price for Masterworks now is around $75 to $80. The early ones would slide off like this and have kind of a faux leather style to them. But when you look on the inside of here, you can tell that this is a quality reprint that has been done. There's usually an introduction by somebody along the lines like Stan Lee, especially for the early ones, because he was the writer. You would get the full cover art in its beautiful full color glory, and you would get a complete remastering of the work. Now, where this was usually an earlier series, something along the lines of the Avengers or the early Captain America or stuff like that, it would range out to doing a lot of different stuff. But this is still the only way we can get like Johnny Blaze Ghost Rider is through the Masterworks series. There is no omnibus collection or even an oversized hardcover of that, as far as I know at this point. There would be alternate covers. This was the first time it gets an alternate artwork, as in we'd had this here marble type of style here, and sometimes it would be gold, other times it would be blue. That would be your direct market variation on the cover. So just like before, when it came to the other type of collected edition, DC would follow suit. 2 years later, in 1989, with DC's Archives editions. These are incredible editions, and these were the ones that really introduced me to the golden era of comic books. This one here has the very first 4 issues of Superman. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but back then Superman issues were 64 pages long, and they do include everything. The style of the art and the remastering of this is utterly gorgeous. Now, much like Marvel, they would go just a little bit farther, and their books on the interior would look just a little bit better when it came to the style and the printing. And we will get back to that in the second video in the series, by the way. But I collected a few of these, and much like the Marvel Masterworks, these things did tend to get pretty expensive. I do know a couple people that actually have every one of these, but this was an early one, so this one ran at only $30.95. A couple years later, you would also get this right here, which is called a Marvel Visionaries. So Marvel Visionaries isn't telling like one complete story. What it is taking an author or an artist, and it is taking a cross-section of their works. So right here, I've got the Roy Thomas one. Roy Thomas is one of my favorite authors when it comes to comics. But he did a lot of stuff. Most people know him from like Conan, or maybe he's running Captain America or Avengers. But we get stuff on here from Amazing Adventures number 8, Avengers 35, 57, 58, Captain America number 19, Chamber of Darkness number 4, Dracula Lives number 1, Doctor Strange number 9, because he took over Doctor Strange after Steve Ditko and Stan Lee left, Fantastic Four 119 and 176, Giant Size Invaders number 1, Crab Hawk 147, Modeling with Millie number 44, that's interesting. Not Brand Eck number 12, which was a Marvel kind of a comedy comic book. Submariner number 8 and 14. Tales of Suspense number 73, and X-Men number 64. It had a great selection of stuff, and the artwork and the remastering of these were utterly impeccable. You did get to see some nice stories in here as well. So it wasn't just what you would regularly get. One thing to give you before we go into the next portion of this is DC, wasn't this Marvel that DC collected editions? DC had their own collected editions as well. This is Vamps, which was a DC Vertigo series that I remember actually buying the very first issue of in store. So this is the collected edition of that. So Vamps, I got to be careful here because Vamps was a Vertigo title after all, and they did tend to have much more kind of violence and nudity. But there would be some great things. This one thing I loved about this here edition Vamps is that they did include like letters pages, which is very rare for DC to do. It's only recently with the Question Omnibus that they actually started doing that again, as well as cover art, both finished and unfinished. One other thing to touch on just before we go into the next section is over in the UK, if you wanted to get like any of the, whether they're Marvel or DC or any of those, you got these Eaglemoss books. And Eaglemoss collected a lot of stuff. So this is a Star Trek Eaglemoss book, and Eaglemoss is a company that collected all the Star Trek. So if it came from Marvel, it came from DC, if it came from Dark Horse, IDW, all of it is under the Eaglemoss banner. And actually, if you put them together, they make a big mural on the side. So it's really cool to get a lot of these. I found some of these here at my local, well, not here, in Kent at my local Dollarama, and I desperately need to have more of them. Now let's dive into indie territory for a second. Not everything is a Marvel or a DC. Sometimes comics come out from companies that no longer exist anymore, and you get these independent ones. I have the Zombie Comics edition for this, and I have the War Comics edition. So basically, comes to this, there's a spine right there. It's a little too thin to do the spinning around too quickly. This is the Mammoth Book of Zombie Comics. And what this basically deals with here is stuff from like Vince Locke's first ever Dead World comics, Scott Hampton's adaptation of R.E. Howard's Slice of Southern Gothic, Pigeons from Hell, Darko Makan's short EC style Shocker the Immortals, a whole bunch of stuff in here with very, very different like styles and formats. You can see like a kind of sometimes like the or maybe slightly more cartoonish style, and then you'll see the much more, I guess the word would be like kind of realistic and different art that we would see all the way through. And it would do a lot of different like comic companies. It would like break it up. Like there's some Dark Horse stuff here. There is stuff here from like the early days. Now this one doesn't go too early the way that the War one does. The War one actually goes pretty early when it comes to the Mammoth stuff. But they did a lot of great stuff. And while we're going into stuff that's not exactly as mainstream as you might see, there is the Silver Age Classics, bought by PS Art Books. The Silver Age Classics is a series that literally does a lot of the Silver Age Classic stuff. They usually run, if you get a soft cover, it can run around like $20, $25. If you get the hard covers like these ones here, they can run around like $45 to $50. But you can usually get them cheaper on the market. So this is Ghostly Tales, one I used to read when I was younger, and this is like an earlier Ghostly Tales. So you got some Steve Ditko in here as well, and it comes along. Got to do carefully like this. See the covers right there. And I do love the way these are done because this one basically tells you right on there the volume. It tells you that the years and the months even. So this is from March 1967 to December 67, issues 60 to 64. So it is altogether 5 issues of Ghostly Tales. And when you look at this, I love the remastering of this. Now, PS Art Books are exactly that. Now sometimes the remaster may not be able to get as like a strong quality remaster as some of the Marvel style books, but you're running with obviously a bigger company, and some of these were harder to find. So you're going to get basically comics that look like comics and comics that look like sometimes that they've been around the block a bit, as you can see right here. But instead of taking away from the style of the comic book, what I find that it does is it actually adds a bit, because this is an older comic. It should not look like it's brand new. It should look like an older comic. One of the other DC kind of like archives line that I did want to mention is this one right here, The Spirit. And Spirit is one of my favorite comic series. If it's pretty much influenced everything else, the Game of the World of Comics, from Watchmen to anything along the way. Will Eisner's Spirit was amazing, and the different people that worked with Will Eisner to make the Spirit. It was just such a unique character that I'm still amazed that we haven't gotten a really great adaptation of it yet. So just so you know, that Spirit movie, that's not a good adaptation of the comic strip. See, Spirit was actually a comic strip. It was in papers. Now it is of its day too, so certain characters are going to look uh, drawn a bit more stereotypical than you would see nowadays. But that being said, this is back in 1943. This one here, for instance, is from January 3rd to June 27th of 1943. So we're looking at an earlier time in the days of the Spirit. Now we're going to get into the really big ones like omnibuses and stuff like that in a second. But the other one I wanted to talk about were these creepy archives. So these are put out by Dark Horse. Dark Horse does some high quality stuff. Now this one here is creator centric, though Dark Horse has put out hardcover editions of all the creepy and eerie magazines with ads and letters pages and everything. I will show you one of those in a second. But this is Creepy Presents Alex Toth. So it takes all of Alex Toth's work and puts it right here and on the black and white creepy stories. Because after all, Creepy and Eerie were was a black and white magazine, so you could get away with stuff that you couldn't get away with from censorship in the color editions of it. But to see an actual one of these, here is Eerie, Volume 10, collecting Eerie 47 to 51 from the Dark Horse archives. And again, these ran here from around like $50 in the US to $55 in Canada. So it wasn't a huge price gap like there is in some of the books. As always, when it came to Dark Horse, their quality tended to be just a bit above what you'd even expect. As you can see, right. Oh, I can't show you that one. But I will try and show you. And okay, I can show you this one. So we can see that their letters pages are included in here, and if it had like black and white or color art, that would be included as well. If there was artwork, like the artwork on the covers would always be, of course, in color. So when you looked at the covers of the books, they would and should be like in color. And as you can see right here, we got one here, and it highlights Christopher Lee as Dracula on there. With that being said, let's get into those oversights that you're probably wondering about. The very first Marvel omnibus came out in around 2005. It was Fantastic Four #1. Now, there were things that were omnibus looking, Ultimate Spider-Man, for instance, but it didn't have the omnibus logo or branding yet. The newer omnibuses have a smaller print type here, as well as a picture along the bottom of the spine with the volume number. A lot of the early Marvel stuff, especially the silver stuff, will come with the covers on here as well. One of the neat things about this type of omnibus is that you are going to look in here, and much like when you saw the creepy and the eerie stuff, if there are letters pages, and there are, then all the letters pages will be collected in here, something that you won't see in the earlier DC books, and we'll get into that a bit more into in the second video. But we got our first one with Fantastic Four in 2005. Right now, this is Amazing Spider-Man. This is the latest volume of Amazing Spider-Man. It's up from 2000 to volume 5, and many of these now have both a standard edition cover and a direct market cover. I'm pretty sure that this one right here, I bought this one at the I think I bought this one at the shop. So this, I think, is the direct. This is a direct market cover. Often what you'll see is in a standard edition cover, they'll have an artist, maybe like an Alex Ross or like a Salvador Del Roca, or more of a modern artist, do a modern rendition of a cover or an event to put onto the put on the front. Whereas the direct market edition will often use actual comic book like artwork. And this one here is from Spider-Man 151, and pretty much a really great issue when it came to Spider-Man. Now, DC started out with their omnibuses just a little bit later, much like we mentioned before. Their omnibuses came 2 years later in 2007. This is a new printing of the Animal Man omnibus. By the way, you should own this. This is incredible. Now, initially, this would have been printed under the Vertigo logo. The modern printing, of course, is going to go to be Black Label, since there is no Vertigo anymore. Black Label took its place. And see right here the way it's done. We have a larger type printing on there, and they don't tend to often use the covers on the back, and instead letting you know kind of what the book is about instead. One thing that has been noticeable as of late is that the print quality and the pages when it comes to the DC stuff has been exponentially getting better, whereas DC used to be known for doing lesser like quality omnibuses, and Marvels have kind of taken a bit of a downward slope, and that now we're getting a bit more bleeding on the pages, as that we're being able to see through the pages. The pages are a lot more thinner, not on everyone, but on some, and some have had what some people think a bit of an odor to them. So always be careful when you're collecting. I want to make sure, like look at that. So you can see that right here we have the artwork for Animal Man, and in the back here where there's not a lot in this one. Actually, DC sometimes doesn't have a lot when it comes to their extras. Depends on the book. But each one of these do tend to have a great interior artwork on the cover. So right here, you can see that the interior cover has some fantastic art with different issues of Animal Man and Animal Man here. Kind of an existential crisis cover, which really worked for this here. And by the way, if you've not read Grant Morrison's Animal Man, you really should. Like everybody should. What makes us suffer this way? Who writes the world? And to give you an idea of what an early edition of the like Amazing Spider-Man do. So for the newer ones, they do have like artwork on them, but for the Silver Age stuff, what they do tend to do is they're kind of uniform. So you can see Amazing Spider-Man, the volume right there. When you look right here, you can see the artwork and the label, and on the back we got the Spidey logo coming out. Now the Spider-Man one does have a lot more stuff in the back of it, whether it be like calendars, different like little kind of neat little things that were put into issues, different artwork, covers for Spectacular Spider-Man like editions that were done back in the day. You know, the Spider-Man Treasury edition, which we're kind of get into. Like Treasury sort of made a comeback in a big way, and I do mean that literally. But they're not the only ones that put out these omnibus type things. There was another company called Titan Books, and Titan Books are becoming popular again right now because Marvel has lost the rights to Conan. Once again, much like they did in the Dark Horse days, Marvel has lost the rights to Conan. So who's doing Conan now? Well, Titan Books just picked up, and their very first Conan book is coming out, I think, next month. I got it pre-ordered. I think it comes in June. But here's one of the early ones, the Simon and Kirby Library. This is the crime one. It was done in 2011, and it is done in a neat way in that it looks like it's slanted, but it's just done in the style of a book with an introduction by Max Allan Collins. As for artwork on the inside, oh boy, does it ever, and it's really cool actually. Now, I bought this one at a comic shop, you know, and they're selling from consignment. So this is definitely an older book, and it has seen a bit of like use. But here, this is an early Titan book one, and so we got stuff here like I worked for the fence, and just some really incredible stuff here. And they could get like pretty violent stuff with some of these characters. Murder on a Wavelength. Love the stuff that they did with Titan Books. There's just a couple more to look at that I left for a bit of a bonus. And stay with me after the credit sequence, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Before we get to the credits, there's just a couple more that I have to show you. And there's some pretty big ones, literally. So first off, let's show you what a Marvel Treasury Edition is. This here is a Marvel Treasury Edition. And to give you like an idea, this here is an omnibus, which I consider like the large, oversized books. This is a Treasury Edition. This is how much bigger it is in both width and in height. What you'll see in here when you open it up is it's got kind of a, not a paper cover, but kind of a cloth type cover. And this is the Grand Design series. So this was an incredible series. It was done to kind of truncate and give you a really interesting, unique adaptation of the X-Men throughout the years. And we got some great artwork in here. Just some absolutely fantastic stuff here by Ed Piskor. And these are actually fairly inexpensive. This one here was regularly around like $40. I bought it on Comic Book Day for around under 20. But the big one that to talk about is this one right here. It's an Absolute. So an Absolute is the big buy from. So this here, by the way, this is the, and it's still a little tiny bit bigger, but an Absolute is considered kind of the creme de la creme when it comes to the DC Collected Edition. This is Absolute Swamp Thing. See, it's volume 1 or 2. Volume 1. So what they do with these, and we're gonna look on the interior of these as well, is that this is meant to be the ultimate way to read this this here comic. So you slide it out of a hard box, just much like you do with your collected boutique editions, and you get this here. Now this has a cloth-like kind of soft substance to it. This is not like regular paper. It is extremely well done. It is extremely well bound, and it will have in the interior, aside from a bookmark, as you can see right there. I'm going to open this up to show you guys what the artwork looks like, or make sure it's something on the inside, and it's just some utterly fantastic things that you can actually see. What's this? So the inside, the portion that was on the back there is right there. As for like features, it depends on the one that you got. This one here included things like the Rites of Spring, Charting the Saga of the Swamp Thing by Stephen R. Bissett. And trust me, if you read or watch enough featurettes on movies, you're going to have seen Stephen R. Bissett. On the recent Arrow video, Sam Katzman box set, Stephen R. Bissett has a really big documentary on there talking about Katzman and going through the whole thing. So as you can see, we got some great stuff here. Look at this wonderful like rendition of this cover. And obviously that's a throwback to House of Secrets. And it just slides in really good. If you're lucky and you're like me, you can get these at a fairly good price. This one here I bought for under 50. But initially, some of these here can tend to get just a bit pricey. Now, that tiny credit sequence I told you about. Hi there, and thank you for staying for that credit sequence. First thing I want to say right off the bat is I want to thank all my patrons. There's a new credit roll coming up actually very soon. I'm working on that right now because you are the guys that literally, like, I may make these videos, but you are the producers of these videos, and I would not be able to do it without you. For my patrons out there, thank you so much. And for my super chatters and donators that actually help keep getting things coming into the library, you have no idea how important that is, especially right now. I promise you a little bit extra, and I always deliver when it comes to that. So first off, I wanted to show you this. See, the Masterwork series wasn't the only series that was on. Wizard Magazine was the thing back in the day. When I was really collecting comics in college, Wizard came around and they kind of like led the boom, a big whole new wave of like 90s era comics. So one of the things that they decided to do was do masterpiece editions. So this is a Wolverine Masterpiece Edition from Wizard Comics. They did a few of these, and this one here has some great stuff. So we got Jim Lee, Claremont, and Burns. We have Uncanny X-Men 139 and 140 here from Chris Claremont and John Byrne. We got Shattered Vows from 172 and 173 on Uncanny X-Men. Incredible Hulk versus Wolverine, the Peter David, Todd McFarlane run from Incredible Hulk 340. Then we get Madripoor Knights, which is the the famous Uncanny X-Men 268, which is that flashback issue of Wolverine and Captain America in World War II with a baby version of Natasha Romanoff, and Blood Debt from Steven Skroce, and that is from Wolverine 150 and 153. These were well done books, extremely well put together, and you would have like the Wizard style article things at the beginning of them, because Wizard had definitely a very unique look to the stuff that they did and that they put out. It's a very 90s kind of in your face type of look, but look how well these are done, and look how interesting and fun it is to have like a cross section of these. Obviously now you can get like the Wolverine omnibuses, but I just really like this because not only did you get the stories in here, but then you get different things like an article here that Wizard probably put out. This is probably a reprint of an article on like the different looks of Wolverine throughout the years. And another one that I wanted to mention was that after EC Comics, the comic book company for all us horror geeks out there, stopped doing their the stuff that they initiated with the hardcovers. Some of the hardcovers were done in black and white, then they would be done later on in color. I've got one of the early black and white ones, but it's at the farm. It's not here. What I do have though are the modern day renditions that are coming out now on a regular basis, and they're coming out at a fairly cheap, around like $25 price range, $19.99, $20 if you live in the U.S. And this here is the Vault of Horror. They are extremely well done. They have 6 issues in each one. Great reads. This is volume 1. You open them up. Again, the quality of these are just impeccable. You wouldn't expect anything else at this point from Dark Horse. I said I was going to mention Dark Horse library editions. So although I don't have any, I would normally kind of pop one up on the screen, and maybe I will after this, because they did one called, one series especially called the Madman library editions, and they're really, really good. If you like Michael Allred's stuff with Laura, his wife, it's just incredible. And I'll actually put one up here, a picture one after this. So thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you for the second part of this over on the Crimson Cult, where we're going to not just look into the omnibuses, but we're going to look into the different types of omnibuses. We're going to look into event omnibuses, Golden Age, Bronze Age. I'm not sure if we've got any Silver Age, but we'll talk about that as well. We'll get a closer look between and the differences between an omnibus, a Marvel omnibus, and a Marvel event omnibus, and a modern run with something like a Jonathan Hickman as opposed to like something like Inferno, and work more into that. So without further ado, here's a library edition. Here we get the Madman library editions. This one runs at around 680 pages, and it's 3.14 kilograms. As for the dimensions, it's 23.88 with 5 by 5.49 by 36.83 centimeters. It is an incredibly well done and well rendered edition. I really recommend that you check these out. This is actually one of the more expensive library editions, as it tends to run around between $85 to $130 Canadian. But a lot of the early library editions that came out from Dark Horse actually ran quite a bit cheaper, to be completely honest with you. But they did put a lot of work into these, and these are truly worth it. If you've gotten some of the earlier stuff that they put out, like the World of Black Hammer, when they did the hardcovers of those usually ran around $65 to $70.